Hi, I'm Julie from Fabric Garden Quilt Shop in Sacramento. Thank you for joining us for our new block of the month called Vintage Rose. This is month one, and I just want to go through some of the things that were in your packet. Each packet will have a color picture of what the full quilt will look like. There is also another color picture which just labels each month which block you will be making. And then you will also receive a list of what fabrics will be used in your quilt. They will also be numbered with the SKU number, which will make it a little bit easier to determine which pieces you're going to be using each time. Jill did write up a welcome letter, so please take a minute to read that because there are some little clues in there. You get your fabric this month, but you're not going to be using all of this fabric this month. Some of the cutting directions will say some of the cutting directions, especially for this pretty black rose here, it will give you several different things to cut. However, this month, the only thing you need out of all those cuts is one 2.5 inch square, which will be the center of your block. The others, it says save for block 2, one of them says save for block 8. I did not cut those this month because, and you will notice in the letter that Jill gave to you, the ones for block 2, it looks like they're going to be using like a square and a square, and the ones for block 8 is a half square triangle. I do not have those patterns with me at the moment, so I don't know what size those are going to be. And if you use specialty rulers, these cutting directions won't work. So if you don't use the specialty rulers, you can cut exactly like this says. But if you want to use a square and a square ruler, or a half square triangle, or the Studio 180 Flying Geese ruler, just cut according to the directions for this month. So, like I said, the center of the block, you have your 2.5 inch square center, then you have a square and a square, and then another square and a square, and I think this particular block here is called an economy block. I made this, I just got back from vacation and I hate to admit it, but I could not find my square and a square ruler. So I made this according to the pattern directions. And when you do the square in a square, you're gonna start with, you look at your directions here and you start with your 2.5 inch square, which I have, here's your not the same fabric. I didn't want to cut up my pretty fabric for the samples, but you've got your 2.5 inch square. And then from the cream dot, it said to cut a 3¼ inch square and then cut it twice on the diagonal so that you end up with 4 quarter square triangles. So when you're doing this one here, take your square, gently finger press it to find the center. Do the same thing with one of these little triangles. Finger press it and then match up the creases. When I stitch it, I'm going to stitch with this side up because this square here is my straight line. That's the one that I want to make sure is perfect. So once you've sewn one on, you're going to repeat the process with the other side. The cutting directions say to press that seam open, which I did here. You press it open and then you're going to repeat it on the other side. Then you can just trim the dog ears off. Just take your ruler, make sure that you still have a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch here, and then cut those dog ears off. And then on the next, for the green leaves, you're going to cut as soon as I find it, it says to cut two 2 7/8 inch squares. If your sewing is perfect, if you are always accurate, you've got a perfect 1/4 inch seam, you cut perfectly, go ahead and cut that 2 7/8. I am not that way. So I cut it 3 inches. That's only 1/8 of an inch bigger, but that's plenty. So you're gonna cut those 2 squares, and in those squares, you're only gonna cut them once on the diagonal. And then you're gonna put them together just like you did this. You start with, you know, one on this side, sew it, this side, and sew it. And again, when you're sewing, you wanna sew with this side facing you, so that when you stitch your seam, you can see your little X here. You wanna make sure that you go right through that or just a thread above it so you don't cut off your points. And then you can press those, and I did press that out. So that will go there in the center. The next step is flying geese. These 4 here are flying geese. And if you like to use the Studio 180 wing clipper ruler, you can do that, and you can make 4 at once. I'm not gonna go over how to use that ruler because not everybody has one, but I would recommend that, especially if you have one like I did. I had one for probably 2 years before I ever opened it up and looked at it and figured out how to use it. That's the only way I like to make flying geese now, because they come out accurate every time. So if you don't have that ruler, then follow the directions in your cutting guide for your flying geese. And here's another sample. You're gonna cut a 4.5 by 2.5 inch rectangle, and you're doing the folded corners where you take your square. You can either, you know, I'll show you here, you can either gently finger press it, you can take it to the ironing board and crease it so you've got, you know, something to follow. I like to use a friction pen, and I'll just draw a line corner to corner. Put that on there, stitch it, iron it, and the friction line will go away, and then you iron it up and you trim it. Before you trim, flip this over and make sure that everything is still straight. You don't have, it's not like that where you've got a lot of green poking out, because if you cut this off, this is your perfect square, your perfect rectangle size. So you wanna make sure that is still perfect. So once you're sure of that, then go ahead and trim that 1/4 inch, and then you need to put the other one on. And again, you've got your line, turn it up like that. Once you've sewn it, flip it over again before you trim it to make sure that it's accurate. One thing I do like to do when I'm sewing these folded corners, I like to start at this end rather than at the point. Sometimes the point, if you stitch going this way on your machine, sometimes that point likes to get, you know, eaten up by the throat plate. If you sew it this way, you're fine. If this point is not there, you end up with a wonky piece. So you're gonna make 4 of those. And then the next step is, you know, look at your pattern picture. I had it right here for the layout. Laid out, you've got your cornerstones here, which are, you know, cut according to the directions. And once you have this in, this should be an 8.5 inch square. Then you're gonna put the sashing on, and these are folded corners again as well. And I'm just gonna show you, when you're pressing these, press them in opposite directions so that when you're sewing this seam, it nests nicely. And then I did press this open because it does eliminate the bulk, and then you just press it up. And when you're putting these on, make sure that your seam lines up with the point of your flying geese, like here and here. So I would just, you know, pin this, make sure you're lined up there, and then pin it all along there and stitch it. And when you're done, you should have a 12.5 inch square. So that is it for this month, and I'll see you again next time. And as always, if you have any questions, give us a call or stop in and see us. Thank you.